A government of the people, by the people, and for the people guards the safety of the people. It helps the people harmed by a disaster, and it helps protect people against the next disaster. Our national government and our state government take the lead role on these battlefronts. Because epic floods and destructive winds and coastal surges, wildfires and earthquakes do not obey lines on a map, they affect regions and metropolitan areas. We have been working hard every day since Hurricane Harvey to meet the needs of Houstonians who became victims of the flood. We rescued, sheltered, and then provided longer-term housing for thousands of people, picked up storm debris faster than predicted, opened our first neighborhood recovery centers as one-stop locations for all kinds of assistance. We started the process of recommending changes in building regulations to make our city safer. We created a shopping list of long-term projects, such as the 3rd U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Reservoir on the west side. But without the proper amount of funding from the state and federal government, we cannot accomplish our short-term goals or long-term goals, such as repairing and replacing the houses flooded by Harvey for people who cannot pay for their own and they do not have flood insurance. We certainly cannot accomplish long-term goals on our own either. Providing massive flood mitigation to protect Houstonians from the next powerful storm and the ones after that. And I want to remind everyone that we faced a lot of flooding during the Memorial Day in 2015 and the Tax Day flood, April 17, 2016, and of course Harvey. Washington provided the kind of long-term mitigation assistance funding after Katrina for New Orleans and after Sandy for New York and New Jersey. And are they any less deserving? And the answer is, of course not. So when the White House unveiled its funding proposal for hurricane relief, I called it a formula for failure. Without money to protect Houston from another flood catastrophe, just replacing what we lost would be a losing game, because then we will have to start all over again after the next flood. And the administration's proposal didn't even include enough to rebuild, especially for the neediest of our neighbors. So we went to Washington, council members, and I want to thank the council members, the director, Marvin Odom, leading the recovery effort, met with lawmakers, worked the phones, and sent emails to our representatives in Congress. Now the proposal has gone from $44 billion to what is recommended by the House, $81 billion for disaster relief for Texas, Florida, and Puerto Rico all together. It's a big improvement from where they started, $44 billion for Texas, Florida, California, and Puerto Rico all together, but not enough for us considering that Governor Abbott told Washington that $61 billion is needed just for the part of Texas damaged by Hurricane Harvey. And by the way, all of us in the Texas region agree with that $61 billion assessment. Besides that, just proposing an amount doesn't buy one roofing shingle or drywall section. Today, the House was considering approval of the package, but the Senate was not. We still need Washington to act on the pressing needs of Houstonians as we work towards full recovery and resiliency. Let me be very clear. This is urgent. And one of the reasons why we decided to hold this press conference today is because it is urgent. And literally, there are thousands of people living in homes that need to be remediated. And there are thousands of people who are still living in hotels. And the question is, where do they go when FEMA says no more? So there is an urgency for it. And we need the money to start and the resources to start flowing down to the local communities. So with me today to tell their stories are several individuals who are present. And let me just say, we know another storm is going to come. We know that. And the people in Maryland, Braeswood, Mayor Pro Tem Ellen Cohen, are asking, what do we do? Do we rebuild? Do we move? Are there dollars to buy out? Okay? And what about the bayous? Now, thanks to the members of City Council, okay, last year we took steps to borrow money from the Texas Water Development Board, $47 million, to pass it on to the Harris County Flood Control District in order to complete Project Braves. And what we do know, had that project been completed, thousands of homes would have flooded. That we know. And we are the city of Houston, we are borrowing money. We have already committed the economic stabilization portion of our budget. It's already gone. Okay? But people are still waiting for services to be provided. And so here today, in order to put faces to this crisis that is existing, we invited just a few people to come to tell their story. Because the debris is gone, the lights are on, and people are assuming that there's still not a tremendous need, and urgency is critically important. Just like tax reform was urgent. Let me just tell you, you can give people tax reform, but when their houses get flooded, what's left? Okay? This is urgent. So let me first call on Miss Deborah Williams of Northeast Houston to speak for a few minutes. Take your time. Yeah. You sure you don't want your cane? Oh. Now that I can do. Come on.
My name is Deborah Williams. Hey, everybody. I live in Northeast Houston, off of Tidwell and Mesa Road. And there's a house by us, runs parallel to my driveway. My house was 4, 5, almost 6 feet of water in my house. There hasn't been anything done. I did receive some money from FEMA, and that money I took and I had some repairs that needed to be done, like my foundation fixed and my plumbing unstopped and electrical work, because my house was built in 1956. And then I was waiting for my house to be rebuilt. Well, that's been since August the 25th is when the storm came. Now I'm currently living in a hotel, and I don't know how long I'll be able to stay there because they don't do it for free. And since almost 4 months have passed, I'm homeless still. So these are the kinds of things that we're fooling with.
Thank you, Ms. Williams.
You're welcome.
And let me just say, Ms. Williams was displaced by Harvey, bounced from one friend to another until she felt she had extinguished all options, and is now in a hotel. There are a little over 5,000 that are still in hotels in Houston alone. Everything in her home destroyed. She lived in her home for 20 years, and she wants to get it rebuilt. She's 66 years old and has various health problems. And we're going to do everything we can to try to get her situation stabilized so she can return to her home. But urgency is critically important. Let me call on Christina Cotero.
Hello, my name is Christina Quintero. I live in East Houston, and I have 2 amazing, beautiful children. When the storm hit, I had to leave my home because Having young toddlers, you know that you have to put them somewhere safe. I evacuated to Beaumont, not knowing that the storm would hit us there as well. We were stranded in Beaumont for 5 days waiting to come back home. No water, little food supply, but somehow we made it home. After these historic rainfalls, nobody could imagine what could happen, and our lives were changed forever. I came home to a house empty. My parents gutted my home. And all my stuff, all my children's stuff, was on the floor, was out there ready to pick up. Baby items, memories, things I hold very dear. After that, we did the best that we could. We gutted out everything. My roof caved in. I applied for FEMA, and I was denied because of clerical errors, things that should be taken care of. I had transitional housing, and once my FEMA claim was denied, I lost that as well. So there was no way to find anywhere else to stay. There was no housing, nowhere to stay. I had to move back to my parents' home. They were affected as well. They're my neighbors. And what we did, we picked up a few pieces of sheetrock, put them in a room just so that my children could live there. And as many know, it's not easy living back in your parents' home. It's not. Especially when you feel that you have nowhere else to go. I have a 2-year-old son that's autistic. And every day he has nightmares. Because he walks back to his house, he opens the door, and he sees a gutted home. Where we took out everything to make sure that there's no mold so they could have a safe and healthy home. There is a need for healthy homes. There is a need for people. My way of coping with this was helping my community because I love and I cherish everybody in my community and all of Houston because I was raised here and I'm proud to be Houstonian. I have seen so many families torn apart living in different places because they have nowhere else to go. Lots of people in hotels, people living, camping outside of apartments because they don't have anywhere else to go. There is a need for assistance. Thousands of people that have been denied, people that are still waiting. And it's urgent because we need our national government to support us, to help us, to make sure that our children, our future, has somewhere to be and grow up safely. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Quintero. Mom, 2 kids, one of whom is autistic. And like she said, lost her home and her car. Denied by FEMA and appeal, but the appeal is still in progress. And the only help she got was a hotel voucher, which she didn't use because the hotel was too far. And having lost her car in the flood, she couldn't get back and forth. Living now with her mom because of the condition of her home. This is a face of Harvey that still needs to be addressed. Karen Knight. Karen.
Hello, my name is Karen Knight. I'm a resident in Southwest Houston on Beechnut. I'm a single mother of 5 children, one is which has paralysis. Just before the storm hit, I knew that I didn't want my daughter to be in a situation where I wasn't going to be able to help her, so I took her to New Caney. This is where we are still. Coming back to my home, it was flooded. It had never flooded before, and it's unlivable. It's full of mold. I've tried to get some help with contractors and whatnot and go out the cheap way so I could get back home, only to find out that there's people out there to also take advantage of you if they think you have any money. So I had to stop that right away so I could save the little bit of FEMA money I did have and hold out the rest of this time until I could get some help. The damage that was done to my home was more than what FEMA has offered, and so I'm in appeal right now. And my son, he was devastated by the storm as well. It knocked him from going to HCC college and taking online classes, something that was very important to him. So we just are holding out, and I'm just trying to be strong so my children doesn't know the devastation that's really going on. You know, when you have to rent from somebody else, it puts you into vulnerability. It keeps you dependent on them. And so I'm just trying to be strong for my children. We know that Houston is a great town, and that's why I brought my daughter here, because I know that I'm going to get the help that I need for her to become an independent woman. And I know that Houston is strong, and we are here today because there are so many people out there devastated by this storm. And I can't imagine what they're going through. Without TOP, I wouldn't be standing here today giving my story. There's so much more to it. But when you look around, there are many other people that are in way worse condition than I am in, and I thank God for that. But we're just, thank you so much. I don't know what else to say.
No, wonderful. Thank you. And Miss Knight, single mom, paralyzed child, approved for FEMA, but only received $9,000, and her home damage estimate is about $37,000. She's not living in a home because the doctor says the environment is not conducive for a paralyzed daughter. Home repairs are incomplete, and living with a friend in New Caney, and has a son in college in Houston who can't get to class and had to shift to online learning. But thank you for telling your story. Let me call on now Joetta Stevenson of the Texas Organizing Project. Top.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you, Mr. Mayor, for this important press conference. My name is Joetta Stevenson. I'm a member and also on the board of directors of the Texas Organizing Project. When Katrina hit New Orleans, Ninth Ward, and other parts of that city, historical black neighborhoods were hit particularly hard. And 12 years later, the Ninth Ward is still a shell of its original self. Most of its residents were never able to return. They were permanently displaced by Katrina, and New Orleans was permanently changed. We don't want this for Houston. We don't want Harvey to force people like the ones you've heard to leave their city or their neighborhoods. We have to learn from Katrina, and the lesson we should carry from that is if our government doesn't help people in low-income neighborhoods rebuild, Harvey will change Houston as well. The wealthy neighborhoods will rebound in our area one way or another, but in our neighborhoods, the Gulfton area, the East End, Cashmere Gardens, Tidwell and Mesa, among others, if they're not first at receiving public help, public assistance to rebuild, families who have lived there for generations will be displaced, and our neighborhoods and city will be permanently changed by this terrible hurricane. Since the storm, TOP members and staff have been talking to people in neighborhoods that were affected by Harvey. People are still struggling. They're struggling mightily. We've spoken to hundreds of people who are still living in mold even today. Just like she stated earlier, that hurricane hit at the end of August. That's a long time to be in a house like that. And the reasons they're living in those types of conditions, well, there are many. Maybe they can't afford a place to live right now or move to right now. Maybe their landlords haven't fixed up their apartments. And maybe that same old sad song, FEMA, turned them down. And they can't afford to fix their own homes. They don't have the money. We need more help to get options for these families. We need FEMA to work with the city and HUD to start up DHAP, Disasters Section 8. We will give people this particular program will give people temporary help to move to a decent apartment and get out of mold. We need more federal and state funding for Houston. We know that there are thousands of homes and apartments that need to be fixed. And we need to have our federal and state officials to step up, step forward to ensure that everyone has a safe, healthy, and affordable place to call home. We particularly need this help in our African American and Latino neighborhoods, which have not ever had enough support and development over the years, just historically. What we're doing today is a good first step. Thank you, Mayor, for standing with residents to put out this call for the money we need right here in Houston. We can't let the suffering of Houstonians be forgotten. We have to fight together every day to bring the needed resources to help our neighborhoods and our families recover. We can't forget the Katrina lesson. No. We can't let Harvey forever change our neighborhoods, our city. Houston is our home. Let's fight together to achieve an equitable recovery. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stevenson. And let me just say, we have to build a city that's stronger and much more resilient. And even though the amount has gone from $44 billion to $81 billion, again, I want to emphasize, that's to be divided amongst several states, not just to the city of Houston. And what we've said to people in Maryland and Bracewood is that we will be fighting for them. Well, the city is doing everything that we can do. Okay? But unless we have the additional resources, we still will fall short. And we're going to fight for people, whether they're in Maryland, whether they're in Cashmere Gardens, whether they're in Kingwood, whether they're in West Houston, on the south side. We're going to fight for them. And that's what we're doing now. We have to build a city that's stronger and more resilient. And I have asked Marvin Odom to lead the recovery effort. Marvin, why don't you come forward?
Thanks, Mayor. I think there's not a lot I can add because I don't think you can say it much better than Christina did. There's a need out there, so I just want to say thank you to Deborah and Christina and Karen for sharing their messages with us today. We are pushing very hard on the funding topic, and I'll ask you to think about two sides of a coin when it comes to funding. The top line number, as we were talking about the $61 billion for the state of Texas, that top line number is extremely important because it helps us answer the question who and what we can do. Who can we help and how much can we do? And it also then allows us to start to share that message with the community so that you can know when you can expect help to come your way. The other side of that coin is how quickly does that money get here? So the first message was really one for the federal government. That second message about how quickly it gets here is going to very quickly shift to the state. As we work with the state of Texas and Austin and the GLO, they're the ones that will help answer that question as to how quickly we can get money to Houston. Our job is to make sure that as soon as it's here, we're ready and able to bring it to the communities. One final comment, Mayor, if I can. I think because I heard it in the comments of several people and certainly the top message, we're designing this recovery on a neighborhood by neighborhood basis exactly for the reasons that you raise. We don't want to lose the character of Houston. The diversity of Houston is one of the amazing things about this city. So that's the way we're designing the recovery, and our commitment is to preserve that. Thank you, Mayor.
I also want to acknowledge Councilwoman Brenda Stardick from District 8, who is also standing with us. I want to make two additional announcements. Today, the city is launching a website called postharvey.org, postharvey.org, to give everyone the details about the congressional aid that we've been talking about. Also today, I'm making public a letter that I sent to Governor Abbott. I'm asking him to look at advancing $200 million line of credit that the city can use. And this is something that should not just be focused on the city of Houston, but on the region as well. The same sort of dynamic should apply for the region. Line of credit to use to continue the work of fixing up homes in Houston so victims like these can return to them. When Congress and the White House provide us with aid, we will use the money to pay the state back. It's a small amount compared to the billions we expect. The point that I'm making, there's about $11 billion in the rainy day fund. We cannot wait until 2019. I'm sorry. We cannot. There are things that need to be done right now. And well, so what I'm indicating, if it cannot be put forth in the form of a grant, fine. Then just advance and loan the region money. And when we receive the money from the feds, we'll give the money back, and you can put it back in your rainy day fund. But waiting until 2019 will not meet the urgent needs that exist. But it is a way of speeding things up for Houston, the leading economic engine of Texas. We had some record-setting rainy days in Houston, and I trust that the governor will use part of the $11 billion in the state's rainy day fund to help our region. I had a conversation last night with Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee and others. I know they're working in D.C. We appreciate all their efforts. But one of the reasons why we wanted to focus on this issue is because neither one of us want Houston and Texas to be penalized by what we have already done. And so we have to speak up. Because if you drive down the streets of the city of Houston, you're not going to see a lot of debris. Okay? If you're watching what the Astros did and 1 million people at the parade, okay. You see Houstonians who are proud of who we are. We're not complaining. We're not whining. Okay? But that doesn't mean that there are not needs that exist within our city, because they are. And urgency is the name of the game. And building a city that's more resilient and stronger, that's critically important. And people are going to look to us, those who are closest to them. And the question they're going to be asking us, what are you all doing? Well, we're looking at our building codes. We're doing that. We're taking the necessary steps to put ourselves to make ourselves more resilient. We're doing that. Okay. Got the local relief fund. Even today, while we're speaking, their focus is on housing today. So they're doing that. But bear in mind the request by the governor that we all support, $61 billion, not to be divided between California, Florida, and Puerto Rico and the islands. $61 billion for the state of Texas. We need more reservoirs in the city. We need to expand the bayous. We need more detention basins. And if you put those strategies in place and there are houses that would still flood, we need additional monies for buyouts. We need money to elevate people's homes. People cannot do that for themselves. Poor people who were already poor before the storm, they've been pressed down. Middle income people have exhausted their savings. Okay? This storm did not discriminate. And everyone is asking, where's the help? And the hope is that people in D.C. will respond. And the hope is that people in Austin will do what they can. And then locally, we'll do our part as well. And having said that, I'll stop and we'll take whatever questions that you may have. And you can ask any of us up here any question.
Mayor, have you been given a timeline from our national leaders as to when you could hear more as far as the funding goes?
You know, I talked with a few of them last night. Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee was one. You know, they're voting on, they're considering a measure to keep the government open, okay? And the question is whether or not the disaster monies will be included in that initiative or whether or not to be separated out. And I know she wrote a letter requesting that it be separated out and the focus be just on the disaster relief. I don't know where they are today on the House side on that, and I don't think the Senate is scheduled to take it up at all today. And so the point that we want to make, and I was making to some of them last night, is that we certainly appreciate that the number that's being proposed has gone from 44 billion to 81 billion. That's significantly more than where it was. But when you take 81 billion and you're dividing it amongst California, Texas, Florida, Puerto Rico, and the islands, that's still woefully short. And even though they're providing an additional $13 billion, for example, in this proposal for a CDBG, Community Development Block Grant, you're still dividing it amongst the various states. That's not all coming. That wouldn't all come to the state of Texas. You know, we need significant dollars on the housing side just here alone. On the mitigation strategies, they're providing monies in there for mitigation, but for all the different states. That doesn't put us in a position where we can be stronger and more resilient. And that's the point. So the timing is important. I don't know when they're going to break. And that's the other reason why we want to have the press conference. You know, the holidays are coming. But for the 5,000 plus people, Houstonians that are still in hotels, okay, what's their gift? For the thousands of people that are living in homes that need to be remediated and repaired, what's their gift? Yeah. That's what's important. And that's why I think it's important for Houstonians to put a face to the crisis. Otherwise, people will assume all is fine and not move with a degree of urgency. Any other questions? Then let me ask you to feel free to talk to any of these individuals, and I know that they will be more than happy to continue to tell their stories. I do want to thank each of these ladies for coming forward and putting a face to their story. And let me just say to you, very proud of the fact that you're hanging in there. Like Houstonians, we don't give up, we don't throw in the towel, and we're still going to be supportive of one another to help meet your needs. Okay? Thank you all so very much for being present. Mayor Pro Tem, thank you for being present. I know you've been facing a lot of questions, all of the council members, in areas that were adversely affected. So thank you. Tom, is there anything that...
We covered it. We need the money, we need it now.
Okay. Thank you all so very much. Thank you.